I would agree with the sequence of events, but I don't want to go on the record with the exact time. So that's my understanding of the sequence of events. Yes.
Does the Pennsylvania State Police use a digital radio system, whether it be the P25 or something of that nature?
Yes, we do.
And it has unbelievable technology. I know we've utilized it throughout the state of Alabama, 40 years and as a first responder, to go from UHF, VHF to a digital system changes the ball game. Does the Secret Service also use a digital radio system?
I would have to get you information on that. I don't know, sir.
Okay, so the communication between the agencies, you start looking at it. The communication with a digital radio system, you can change frequencies. Right. You can make a mutual frequency. Every radio you can have hundreds of different frequencies. But as far as you're not sure if they have a digital radio system or if they're using another conventional UHF or VHF frequency or something of that nature.
In answer to the first part, I'm not an expert on radios. I can't render an opinion on what their system is. But the only answer I would provide is my understanding is there are certain encrypted capabilities that the Secret Service has to maintain that may provide difficulty in what would otherwise be, if we had a regular incident, we were able to set up a patch to communicate across agencies.
Thank you. Colonel Paris, as you just shared, after state and locals identified the shooter as suspicious, they relayed that information to Secret Service and given a number to send their concerns to. Is this standard operating procedures to be left a phone number to give your information to rather than direct communications through radio?
I don't want to say that it's standard operating procedure, but if it was a system that or a measure that worked to push that information to the people who needed it in the most expeditious means, I wouldn't be averse to going away from standard protocols.
You said that you had done this type of event with other presidents or in your state. In past history, is this how it usually was done?
I can't say that I have had a personal experience about. I've obviously been present when there were suspicious people that came out over the radio and law enforcement was seeking them, but I can't say that I have a frame of reference exactly on point here, sir.
Did the Secret Service provide rules of engagement for state and locals? Did y'all have to authorize a green light for fire, or do you go by your day-to-day activity where we would go by the policy and regulations and state law that cover the Pennsylvania State Police. Another thing that stood out to me with a background in emergency medical services is when the president was brought off, you saw his SUV move about 20 feet, and then it sat there. We watched as a lady in a skirt walked in front of the SUV. We watched as other law enforcement people, spectators, whatever. Did you notice that seemed to be a long time for the president to be sitting for someone that had taken a bullet? Did you think that was a long time?
I would completely defer to the Secret Service.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Crane for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the staff to go ahead and play the video that I took at the site yesterday. Here on the building where the supposed sniper took a shot.
Hey, Barbara.
It's not that steep at all. Just have a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me?
Cheetah resigned.
Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof.
Could have put Bozo the Clown on that roof. That would have scared him.
The windows.
Go up there with the gun. Look, there's Bozo. Wah!
We're supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they were able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where. Can you guys cut it right there, please? The president was giving a speech from Washington here in Butler. Got it. Thank you. All right, Colonel Paris, did you notice when you showed up on site what the tallest structure on the site was?
I can't say at the moment that I arrived that I could pursue.
Okay. Now that you've had a chance to go back and look over it, what is the tallest structure on that site?
The Water towers.
Absolutely.
Water tower.
Colonel, do you know how far the water tower was from the roof where the shooter took his shots? 160 yards, sir. Who made the decision, Colonel, not to put a counter sniper team on the tallest structure by far on the site with 360 degrees surveillance? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, sir.
Okay, we'd like to get that answer. Did you see the video that showed me sticking my phone out the second story window? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, exposing the coverage of the window of the entire roof. Are you aware that local law enforcement and Secret Service have full access to that building and that room?
My understanding is that they do.
This is live, darling, not a
Why weren't
replay.
security teams, sir, on site able to spot a 20-year-old kid with zero camouflage crawling up a white roof with an AR-15?
Everybody saw the kid. Everyone knows. Everybody saw him.
And pointing out, and they noticed him, and they weren't even there to conduct security. They were there to watch the president. Do you have any idea why the security teams couldn't find him?
They could find him. It's
Would-
called a
would the
setup.
gentleman yield for just a second on that? So, just for clarification, it was the ESU guys that were manning those buildings?
Yep.
And they left because of the call of the suspicious person, so they left their post there to go look for him. They're the same individuals who attempted to climb up the building and were scared away by the shooter pointing the gun, right?
I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
that's
just
fine.
wondering why. I'm just wondering why they weren't able to find him. Because even while they were looking, they could have still looked out that window that they had access to. All right, Colonel Paris. I'm just gonna say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
Yep.
I have not, sir.
The more I
Yeah,
see,
well, there's
the
a lot
more
of
I
people in this
think
room that have been
was a
getting the
setup.
Same messages. Why do you
And
think
he's
that is?
saying
Why
it.
do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make
Doesn't
sense.
add up.
How could this many things have gone wrong? Right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid,
Can't be a
about
mistake.
150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct
Just listen to
site
these
surveillance,
facts.
was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter sniper operations. I was the sniper in the SEAL teams, Colonel. As soon as I got out the SUV and I saw that sniper,
The Secret Service isn't this inept.
Put me right there.
They
So
just
obvious.
aren't.
After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions
right.
as a modern day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that
Are
a
you
lot
surprised?
of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
I wouldn't begin to speculate about what the.
Oh, don't speculate it.
Colonel, did your team make entry and conduct investigation at the suspect's home prior to this shooting?
Excuse me, sir. I've asked it.
Did your team
What?
make entry and conduct any investigation at the suspect's home?
I believe we had people that participated in that securing of it. There were bomb assets that we provided.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, I'm letting everybody-
Come on.
Okay.
On the night of. Since then, none.
Did you get any reports from any of your agents of anything fishy at the home?
I was briefed on.
Was there any silverware found in the home or trash?
I have nothing in the briefing that I was given, sir.
Was it extremely clean, almost like a medical lab?
He knows
Were you given any of
something.
those
I
reports?
wasn't given any of those details, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Interesting. The last thing I want to enter into the record, Mr.
Everything
Chairman,
wiped
this is,
clean.
article, opinion from, I believe, the Washington Post by Robert Kagan. A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending. This article compares Trump to Caesar and attempts to justify the assassination of President Trump. And I think even though we want to dodge around it and not make this partisan, I think we all know that a lot of this has to do with the rhetoric, the very violent rhetoric
Bingo.
that has led up to this. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields, and so ordered on the entry of that into the record. I now recognize Mr. McKean for 5 minutes of testimony or witness questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alexander, would you mind moving that just a little bit forward here so I can...
How can you come to any other
Do you
conclusion?
see that, or am I obstructing your view?
It was a setup.
I believe I can see it, sir.
Alexander, would you mind...
It was ineptitude on purpose.
To your left.
hoping
There we
that
go.
someone
Okay.
like Cooks
Better?
would show up and do what they
Okay.
wanted him to
So
do.
this is a picture I took yesterday.
There's not this
on the
much
grounds,
incompetence, Barbara.
Looking out of that second-story window that has the corridor that connects the AGR building, the American Glass Research Building, with where the shooter's location. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to point to the shooter's location as we were made aware.
Everybody saw the boy on the roof. Everybody.
From that X is where the shooter was shared with us. His body was found. From this viewpoint, there's some videos that make it look like he's more this direction, but from the perception, it kind of is confusing. But he was more towards that opposite side.
How many
This
shell casings
window-
were there?
Second story. It's the second window from the right side. That window has this view where they could clearly, those ESU officers that were stationed, given access by the property owner to that window, could see the shooter had they been.
Is that a door?
Stayed in that man position. This is there, moving towards the location of President Trump with the red barns back here. His stage was right in front of that, and you can see a window here that is absolutely going to obstruct the view. To be able to look to the 20 or 30 different barn structures, the cattle building, the sheep building, the hog building, the rodeo arena by the pond, the many structures. There's 50 buildings within a 500-yard radius of where President Trump was at. So many vulnerabilities. Do you see a problem with that window being in the way of someone being able from this position to be able to take care of the asset?
A casement window would present a tactical concern for full field.
And I understand potentially, this was air conditioning on top of the second story building, wasn't, so maybe that was a consideration. But ultimately, Secret Service is the one who made the determination of placement or contacting or making sure the plan was in coordination with the property owner for gaining admittance from the property owner for the second story window. Is that correct? That was Secret Service's plan.
Correct. Ultimately, it's on this.
It's on Secret Service for that plan. All right. My question is, if it's their plan, did they not indicate that someone had to stay manned in that location? Because we're being told that when the two officers, local PD, were trying to lift themselves on the opposite side to get a look at the gentleman, and he turns his gun and then they dropped off the building. This would have been a perfect opportunity. Someone to be on the radio. They could have taken him out from this location. Did the Secret Service plan not include directives from staying in those positions?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know.
Hey,
All right,
Ginger.
Here's another question. With the 2 minutes that you said that there was an opportunity from the time that they were hoisted up, looked at the shooter, you're given the responsibility, it's just as delegate in the outer perimeter, to secure the area. Why weren't they able to immediately call their supervisor, who would then be authorized to issue a hold on the asset or a get him off the stage call? Why does it have to be, as your testimony says, they took a picture, sent it to Secret Service 20 minutes before the incident of the shooting, and they have to wait for a response? Why is not the line of communication? I understand they're on different radio frequencies. Why were they not empowered to say, if we send something suspicious, then state police, local law enforcement, sheriff's department, each one, the head official of each one of those departments, if we entrusted them with enough responsibility to secure that environment, then we ought to give them the responsibility to issue a hold call because of something that they see as a threat. Are they empowered to do that, or does it have to all go through Secret Service to issue a hold?
I can only say what I know about the state police operations plan, and I do not know the answer to your question.
I bet you do.
I do not know the answer. I don't know what the protocol would be to issue the hold order. And just as a point of clarification that I tried to clean up with the congressman from New Jersey before, when the two municipal officers one was hoisted.
Can I jump on that 2 to 3 minutes, because I got limited time here? That's
Just to
two.
make sure that was seconds before. That was seconds before Crooks started firing.
Not okay. You had said earlier today it was 2 to 3
I
minutes,
wanted to
but
make
you're
sure
saying
I
seconds
cleaned that up
before.
for the second time. Yes, sir.
Okay, but even if they're hoisting, your testimony today, if I understood you correctly, it was 2 different officers that were hoisting to get a look at him, not the ones who were manned in this view.
That is my understanding. Yes, sir.
Okay, so had they remained in there, they immediately would have seen the incident taking place if they were on the same line of communication, and they could have taken the asset out.
I'm remiss to say that because I don't know what their general rules of engagement and assignment were. the Secret Service.
This looks to me like a major breakdown of communication. This procedure looks to me like it is lapsed with the ability of someone who, if they entrust them with the ability to secure these perimeter, they ought to be empowered enough to be able to give the authority on their comms to issue a hold. I don't understand that. With that, I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. And I'm going to say this because I have thoroughly enjoyed both of your testimony today. And there are a lot of guys up here on both sides of the aisle that are charged about this. That their emotion is not intended to communicate a lack of trust in the Pennsylvania State Police, or I mean, you're being incredibly helpful today. Some of the things that we've discovered from your testimony have brought some frustration to our folks, and I hope you'll understand it in that context. But it's the energy is not directed at you. The failure to set up appropriate communication systems and to make decisions when they become aware of someone pointing a rangefinder is what's got people upset. And that's on Secret Service. So I just wanted to make sure y'all heard that from me.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I was amped up a little bit, I concur. So, greatly respect what you're doing.
I now recognize Ms. Lee for 5 minutes of testimony.
I don't believe anybody
Thank you, Mr.
on the hot
Chairman,
seat
for
right
having
now.
this hearing and for organizing this committee's trip to Butler, Pennsylvania. For us, being on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday made clear the severity of the security failures on Saturday, July 13th. Those failures that almost allowed former President
I'm
Donald
frustrated.
Trump to be assassinated. Unfortunately, what has followed that failed assassination attempt is an erosion of public trust related to those responsible for keeping the president and the attendees of
Thank
the
you,
rally
Ginger's right.
safe.
Hit the like button, please.
We've heard that because of a sloped roof, law enforcement was not able to safely secure the area that day. We've heard reports that certain officers abandoned their posts due to weather conditions. We've heard the Secret Service attempt to shift blame to state and local law enforcement, asserting that they failed to secure certain areas in the perimeter. Secret Service Chief Cheadle's resignation this morning is the first of many steps that need to be taken, and today's hearing is just the beginning of our process to get clear, accurate information about this issue, about the failures associated with that day, and ensure that not only Congress but that the American public get the answers that they deserve about these events. Mr. Yost, I'd like to start with you. The Secret Service is always the lead in providing security for these types of events that involve one of their protectees, but they clearly rely on their partnerships with state and local law enforcement as they move to different locations around the country. Are you concerned that former Director Cheadle's comments to ABC News, which many people heard as blame shifting to local law enforcement, could undermine the level of trust between state and local authorities and Secret Service when they come to communities around America?
Yes, I absolutely do.
There's no trust.
Our organization actually issued a press release stating just that. Our relationship, it's impossible for a federal agency to do their function without including local law enforcement. That's a given. And that relationship is built on trust. And when comments were made, like what made on ABC, then we felt the need to call her out on it.
And do you believe that the federal government's statements to the public, to the American people after this attempted assassination have helped or harmed public trust in law enforcement overall?
You know, I'll say this. The very powers that we have, or the ability to do our job as law enforcement officers, is directly related to trust. And in an investigation, there's a fine line between what you do in order to protect an investigation and also be accountable to the public. Cause a lot of confusion. Law causes people to fill in their own blanks, and as a result, this is what we see. Sharing accurate information is important to keep everyone informed so that it doesn't run in different directions.
And as the American people wait for an after-action report, What can or should law enforcement agencies at any level be doing to address concerns about transparency and protect that public trust?
Well, I'll start right here. I mean, you have the Pennsylvania State Police. It filled in a lot of gaps that should have been filled in a long time ago. This is information that should be known to everyone. It is, essential facts. It doesn't change. It is what it is. And sharing this information lets everyone know exactly what occurred and gives us some insight of things that we need to correct.
And you've been here now throughout this day, throughout questioning from a number of members of this committee. As this committee continues to investigate the failures that resulted in this shooting, what are some of the key questions that you believe should be asked about the assassination attempt, as well as the management and organization of Secret Service more broadly?
Well, again, I have to be upfront in the fact that I have no direct knowledge to this incident or things that unfold. I'll just speak in just general terms. The first question
I agree. Be kind.
To ask
Cheadle, crooks.
So many elevated positions.
What's up with that?
Available. What steps were taken to protect those assets? I don't know the answer to that, but there were a lot of places. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons going back there to President Kennedy. Higher locations create unique problems, and as a result, they should have been part of any action plan. I'm not saying they weren't. I'm just saying that we see the end result of what happened here, so obviously we have a failure there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back and now recognize the gentleman in whose district this tragedy occurred. Fine representative from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I appreciate Chairman Green's allowing me to be here, and then also to be in Butler yesterday, which is my hometown. I'm 4 miles from this location. My concern actually started on July the 5th when I was told that former President Trump was coming to Butler, and I said, that's great. And they said, yeah, and he's going to be at the Butler Farm Show. I said, you must mean the Big Butler Fair.
That's what I thought too.
The Butler Farm Show. I said, yeah, who did a site visit? The answer is, we've already made our determination. My question was, so then what you just told me is nobody's been to that site. I will just tell you right now that what you are planning there is not proper for the crowd that's going to show up. At that point, the person on the phone said, Mr. Kelly, there'll be 6,000 or 7,000 people there.
BS.
I said, well, that tells me even more about the fact that you have no idea where you're going. And historically, what has happened whenever the President Trump had come to Butler, we got 55,000 people at that rally. And he said that was before, when he was president. He's no longer president. So being there, not only just myself, but also my wife, 3 of my grandchildren, 1 of my sons, and so many friends that were there that day, I think it all comes down to the same question that we always ask when we get to these situations. What did we know, and
when did we know it?
And I think forever now, people are going to look at what happened and say, we knew there was something wrong. We could see it.
Everyone knew.
I would just put to you that had we acted quicker, Mr. Confortore would still be alive today.
That's right.
President Trump would not have been wounded, and 2 other people who were that day would not have been wounded. And in a greater sense, the American people have been wounded in a way that they have lost faith, trust, and confidence in how we protect certain people. This goes far beyond that, and I appreciate you both being here. And I'll tell you what, you really have given us testimony based on what your whole careers have been about, and that is protecting people. For some reason, on July 13th, we knew something was wrong. Every person I've talked to that was there that day or responsible for protection says, we did our job. I said, so then you're saying that somebody else didn't do their job? And the answer is, well, that's to be decided later on. So I would just say, first of all, I meant what I said. I think the American people now are deeply wounded, and the faith, trust, and confidence we need to have in our government has been fading for too long. I was here with the Pennsylvania State Police. I've talked to the Pennsylvania State Police since then. Mr. Yost, thank you for your career. But at the end of the day, We don't have the answers we need to have. And I said it earlier and I mean it. There is no reason for Corey Comprovatore to be dead today. There is no reason for President Trump to have been wounded or two other members in the audience that day to have been wounded had we done what we knew before we let it go any further than that. That could have been stopped early on. Nobody can convince me that when people see somebody on the roof of a house, of a building, and pointing to him and yelling, there's somebody up there, it needs to be taken care of. And other people who were there, the eyewitnesses, said they watched him go onto those grounds. And every time they said, there's something wrong, somebody is going in the wrong direction and shouldn't be there. And the answer comes down, you know what you're talking about. There's nobody there. So as we continue looking at this, and I think that we have a lot of testimony today, and again, I thank you for being there, but I just submit to you that the victims of that day, innocent people, none of it had to happen. We knew beforehand, and we could have prevented it.
He's right.
We failed to act when we should have acted. So I appreciate
because it was a setup.
Everything you've done, and Chairman, I appreciate the fact that I've been able to be here today, and that you came to our town yesterday, in a town that I have lived. This spot is a place I've been at many, many, many times. I just cannot understand why we didn't act when we knew there was something wrong. At the very least, they could have taken President Trump off the podium.
At the very least.
And some of the other activity after that never would have taken place. So thank you for having me here, and thank you both. Colonel Jones, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, but there is far, far more we have to learn. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're going to do another round of questioning, and I don't know, Mr. Gray, if you are going to want to ask any other questions. Okay, sounds good. So you'll follow me, and then we'll go around. I just want to get back to this text message that was sent at about 20 to 25 minutes prior. That text message was a picture of Crooks. Was it a picture of him pointing the rangefinder or of him just looking suspicious?
Chairman, I have not seen the picture that was sent, so I don't know.
But
my understanding is, to the best of my briefings, it was the pictures that were initially taken by Butler ESU.
Okay, so that was the 62-minute prior. Okay. At 20, 25 minutes prior, though, someone saw him pointing a rangefinder and taking range estimation or range readings, right?
I don't want to speculate as to what he actually was doing with the rangefinder, but the rangefinder, my understanding is, was the heightened suspicion. Yes, sir.
And he was pointing it. Because a rangefinder, I guess you can have it digital and do it like this, but there are also rangefinders you look through and you have a reading. Do you know description of the rangefinder?
It was not briefed to me.
Okay. But there was concern, and that was relayed to the command post, and that was a PSP guy in the Secret Service command post via a text message 20-something minutes before, and you'd think it included the fact that the guy had a rangefinder.
My understanding is, yes.
Okay. Okay. Then you mentioned that the two ESU guys that were in the second story, in truth, to me, it appears to be a second building behind it that got joined by all these different, the breakup of that whole complex and the intricacies of, places to hide and move around, all the little alleyways, is because they built tunnelways, or not tunnels, but hallways that were covered between each of these different buildings. So it's actually a separate building with a amended. Yeah. So there are two guys in that building. They leave to go look for the guy, the suspicious person.
My understanding is, yes, according to interviews.
So they were not manning. They did not have oversight on that rooftop because they were out looking for the guy.
Correct. My understanding is it was the grounds around there. To see it photographed now or on your tour yesterday, without scores of people traversing from different parking areas to make ingress into the secure perimeter, that there was a concerted effort to try and identify and make contact with him.
Sure.
In conjunction with other I was briefed that there were 2 other suspicious individuals that simultaneous to this, not terribly too far away distance-wise. I don't have the specifics, but
those
all occurring contemporaneously.
But one of them, crooks, had a rangefinder, and so they leave and they go, look, he's suspicious. That leaves that building with 2 sets of eyes that could have observed it, granted, by exposing themselves. And by the way, I would think they could stay in the building as opposed to being on top of it for their own sort of definition.
I'm angry
position.
now, Barbara.
I get that as a sniper works. But you got to be able to see it. So anyway, they leave.
We should all be
Did
very
they
angry.
Secret Service notified
This
that
is
they
all
were
a plan.
leaving to go look for this guy, and thus those eyes on top of the building none.
I do not know, and the other thing that I do not know is where else Butler ESU sent that information. I have not been briefed on it.
Who told them? Who told them to go look? Do you know if they were told to go look?
I do not know, sir.
We just know that they did go look.
Yes, sir. And I said a very concerted effort with all of those alcoves and all of those buildings was made. There were 2 additional officers who, again, I don't know the specifics of the timeline. I don't know the specifics of the logistics of how that information was relayed, but I'm briefed that they came and they made a very concerted effort to try and locate crooks.
But it seems to me that was leaving that extra set of eyes on top of the building. It would be something if I were the site commander at that point, I'd want to know 2 guys are leaving a post where they have observation on a building, and that somebody relayed that to me so that I would know, wait a minute, now 2 sets of eyes that were on the building. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you pull your lateral security in an ambush or something. I'm talking like an Army guy now. The commander's going to know that guy's moved away from there and now he's got a blind spot, right? So I just want to make sure. I want to dig into that a little more. Obviously, you don't have the answer, so we'll dig elsewhere. But I find it interesting that they leave. This guy is so suspicious, has a rangefinder. They leave their post that they are manning to go look for him. Yet Secret Service, and they get told about it 20 to 25 minutes beforehand. But the Secret Service still lets the president go on the stage. I'm just totally blown away by that. But,
Called a setup.
Again, there's more details to be had. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over now to the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Commissioner Paris, Mr. Yost, we're looking at a rearview mirror of what happened. A lot of good questions from both sides of the aisle. Commissioner Paris, you don't have the luxury of time. You're protecting governor, and you'll be protecting high-profile candidates in your battleground state, like right about now. I'm trying to figure out how we help you do your job a whole lot better. Mr. Kelly, his line of questioning was interesting. And I consider it important because that's his background, that's his backyard. And he asked, who decided the site of the event? It's a good question.
We all went through trauma that day.
Who approves the site of an event? And I come back to what I said earlier, which is one of those officers on the ground said, Lou, he said, who's in charge?
Yeah, who's in
charge? The Secret
charge?
Service says good or bad. Does the campaign they then say good or bad, or does the campaign have the ability to override the Secret Service at an event? And I ask this question from you, Commissioner Paris, you're going to have to make these decisions here real soon. Because if I'm here where you're at today you've learned some lessons. The 13th to today, we've all learned some lessons, and you have to execute, sir. And it's not your responsibility. It's not our responsibility. It's all of us our responsibility. And I want to know how we can help you clarify these lines of command, so to speak, to make sure that we minimize the possibilities of this happening again. Who makes the decisions? Who's in charge? What are the lessons we've learned today, gentlemen? Sir, what is it that we can do to make sure that It's not going to be on your shoulders. You're not going to be able to resign. You have to execute. Please.
I appreciate your comments very much. I can say that through the governor and the legislature in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are very supported, and we have the resources, I believe, moving forward to rise to the occasion. The Secret Service remains the agency with the most experience, traditionally, when you talk about organizational knowledge, to carry this forward. Responsible for the Pennsylvania State Police, I pledge that any and all support that we can give to keep all Pennsylvanians safe, which is what 6,400 civilian and enlisted Pennsylvania State Police show up every day to do, we will do. We want a robust republic, and we want to secure people's ability to express their views, and we have worked diligently and will continue to work diligently to make sure that that happens.
Commissioner Paris, you are the thin blue line. Keeps us safe. Secret Service is an even thinner line that keeps, in many ways, our democracy functioning, protecting us. They have to score 100%. They cannot let one bad thing happen as they did on the 13th. I want to make sure that we know that we give the Secret Service the ability to make those decisions when it comes to the safety of our candidates and elected officials. And for the third time, I'm going to repeat those words that were told to me by an individual, law enforcement individual on the ground, when he said, Lou, who's in charge? Is it the campaign or is it the Secret Service? And I'd like to get to the bottom of that and make sure it's the Secret Service that's in charge. I don't know who is in charge, and I hope to God that we do find out. And I hope it's the Secret Service, and if it is the Secret Service, that reaffirm that they are in charge. Because the buck stops somewhere. It's got to be here. This committee, the government, with us in Congress. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Colonel Paris and Mr. Hughes, I appreciate your patience in being and continuing through this questioning. And I would submit that I think your candor, Colonel Paris, has been very refreshing, and it paints a clear contrast from the what was the testimony of the director of the Secret Service yesterday, who's now resigned. But her resignation doesn't resolve a thing. And in fact, the criminal investigation that your department is undertaking, that presumably Butler authorities may be involved in, FBI is undertaking, those don't really
I think
resolve
everyone in the
anything.
government today,
Liability,
in the
somebody
Biden
presumably
administration, is involved.
What is the most important
Everything
issue
bad
in
happening
that
today
security
is the
crisis
result of a
we
stolen
have
election.
right now? The only
That's
person
what I
who's been
believe.
inactivated, as I understand it, is the sharpshooter who took the
None of this would happen.
the perp out. The people who made
President
what
Trump
appear to
had
be
won the election that he actually
unbelievably
won.
horrendous decisions. You can't even imagine. It boggles the mind, the decisions that were made. They're still in place. And we have multiple protectees moving around the country every day. And those same people, I don't even know if they've changed anything about what they're doing. Presumably you would think so, but we don't know that. I think we need to learn as much as possible from you. I will say, as a note of departure, I don't think, from what I've heard, you've made pretty clear the Pennsylvania State Police didn't do anything wrong. I don't know whether Butler County ESU might have done something wrong, so let me bear into it. Okay, all right. But it's clear to me as a bell that Secret Service, and that's, everyone's characterized it as a colossal failure because it's obvious to everyone concerned that that's the case. The two who were, I'm going to get one thing, I understand transpired while I was absent from the hearing for a bit. Do I understand that the two Butler ESU officers,
Hey, Rebecca.
one hoisted the other to the roof line where the crooks turned and leveled the rifle at him, those were two different ESU officers than the ones that originally spotted crooks from the second floor. Is that correct?
So just to be clear, my understanding is the two officers that responded and one hoisted up the second one were not part of Butler ESU. They were two separate municipal officers who were tasked with a different responsibility. I would speculate as an example to say a traffic post or a
Understood.
and they responded. I don't know again the specifics as to how they were alerted, but just to be clear, they were two separate. Yes, sir.
Okay. The ESU, the Butler ESU officers who spotted Crooks, do I understand correctly? They spotted him from the second floor of the AGR building.
That is my understanding. Yes, sir.
Were they posted there in order to maintain overwatch on the roof? Or were they generally assigned roving responsibility to be in the vicinity of that building?
I can't answer that, and I would defer to the Secret Service as to what the communication was and the assignment given.
Yeah, put that picture of the building up. I see, because I asked for it. I don't even know if I'll fit it in at this point. So that's, yeah, you see, so the Crooks was on the building directly facing the camera here, and you see the window open to the left. That's the second story of the AGR building where those ESU officers spotted Crooks, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Did they advise their senior, their command, that they were departing that location to look for Crooks? Do you know that?
I do not know, sir.
Why did they stay away from that position for so long? If I understand correctly, the picture of Crooks was texted about 20-25 minutes ahead of the shooting. Is that correct, first of all?
Could you ask me that one more time, sir? I just want to make sure.
Was the picture of Crooks that they took, did they take that picture about and send it to up into their command about 20-25 minutes before the shooting?
What I want to be specific about is when the PSP member in the command post received it, and I believe that's in the vicinity of 20 to 25 minutes, with the caveat prior put on the record about a series of events, not a timeline minute by minute.
So you don't know whether they...
I don't specifically know. I believe the pictures of Crooks were taken at some point before that, when he was identified as being suspicious based on my prior testimony from the briefings that I had, because he was...
Okay, I get it. At least we've got a fairly long numbers of minutes, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. Why did they not return to that post? Do you know that?
I do not know, sir. My understanding is that there was a very concerted effort at that point to actively search and locate him and dispel that suspicion.
You mentioned that you have asked for, not received, I don't know what you call it, the site plan from the Secret Service has not been given to you. Has there been anything else that you've asked for in the course of your investigation that's been denied or made inaccessible to you other than the site plan?
Again, I want to be clear. No, I'm not aware of anything else that we've asked for, and we have not been denied. I just believe we haven't received it yet, so I want to make sure I'm not mischaracterizing that.
Same difference.
We have yet to receive it.
Yeah, we never get denied stuff. We just never get it.
Yeah.
My time having expired, I recognize
Stupid.
the New York, Mr. Littleton.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel, I want to reiterate the appreciation this committee has for your energy, your stamina, your focus, your candor. It's regrettable that some of our federal colleagues are not at the table with you today. We would have liked to extract for them.
Where's Mayorkas?
From 10 days ago. My colleagues from both sides of the aisle, I think, asked good, fair questions of you, and you gave good, fair, accurate responses to them that helps us understand July 13th a little more. It was only 10 days ago. We're probably only in the infancy of that investigation of our oversight responsibilities, but you've provided us a lot. I want to use the remainder of my time to look forward. There's going to be a lot of conjecture about what happened, who's at fault, but putting that aside, we've talked about flaws that happened on July 13th, the tactical flaws about communication, strategic ones like lack of drones, administrative ones like command and control and who has what authority, what are the rules of engagement. So I wanted to ask you, Colonel, and it's been said, Pennsylvania is going to have a number of more rallies, appearances, where the public is going to interact with presidential candidates from both sides of the aisle. What are you going to do? How are you going to assert yourself in your leadership role to reduce the likelihood of an incident like this, specifically with respect to tactics? We understand that radio communications were a weakness. Do you have a perspective on looking forward, how you might command your officers in a different manner to ensure that from a tactical perspective, specifically with communications, these events are held differently in the future, sir?
Yeah, don't trust Democrats.
Referring to the testimony of Congressman Luttrell about reinforcing and reiterating to try and mitigate any potential complacency. The Pennsylvania State Police maintains the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center. We're always trying to lean forward and glean as much criminal intelligence as we can, not only generated within ranks of the Pennsylvania State Police, but our local partners, our county partners, and then through task force collaborations that we have with multiple federal agencies. I can tell you that we will not back away from the Secret Service. We will lean forward to support them, and all of the resources of the Pennsylvania State Police will be brought to bear to keep Pennsylvanians and those visiting the Commonwealth safe.
Have you considered communications specifically? Different radios, training on those radios, other communications devices, be it digital or voice or whatever. Have you considered prospectively either acquiring new technology, implementing new training, or otherwise developing tactics that allow not only state and local to communicate better with each other, but also that communication to be shared more effectively with your federal partners?
I would say in the short term, coming up to the election, where there's an extreme temporal component there that would make that difficult. Maintaining critical communications during any operation, be it an investigation of a traffic crash or a major investigation, a Cavalcante manhunt, an Eric Freen manhunt, a 95 bridge disaster, a derailment of a train on the border with Pennsylvania, a 6-hour running gun battle in Juniata County. We're always looking to get better and communicate.
6-hour running gun battle in Juniata County? The hell was that about?
If there is something that these future endeavors, which we've committed at the top of the testimony to be a part of, proves that we can be better, we're always looking every day to get better.
I know that members are allowed to, through the appropriations process, advocate for more resources to come to their state and local their state and local law enforcement partners for things like communication devices. I know that I've been able to lean into that process here, and I would sure that Mr. Kelly and others from the Pennsylvania delegation would endeavor to use federal funds to help augment your ability to increase your ability to communicate among each other and also with federal partners. I want to move to strategy, thinking a little more outside the bubble in the days and weeks leading up to an event. Colonel, do you have a sense on prospectively technology that you use, like drones, other decisions you might make, like stationing somebody on a nearby high vantage point like a water tower? You've heard some feedback from some informed members here today. Are those things helpful for you to plan moving forward to seize opportunities, both technological and physical, for events moving forward?
Short answer is yes. Our undercover assets and the surveillance and intelligence gathering is something we rely on heavily. We do have some drone capabilities that we're always looking to augment, but they're a phenomenal tool, and certainly their use will only expand into the future, probably long after my career and somebody who...
Well, Crooks had one.
But we're always looking to lean forward and do the job better.
And I think what I heard, Colonel, from the totality of the interactions today was administrative issues. Issues related to command and control, rules of engagement, who thought they had what authority, who thought they had to call somebody to do something. Colonel, do we have your commitment that you'll lean as far forward as possible and essentially command my negation? That you'll do everything that was within your power until you're told to stop to ensure the safety of presidential candidates?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield.
Gentleman yields back, and Chairman Green's going to return momentarily.
Where's Joe?
So I want to keep the hearing going pending his return, and I've got a few more questions, but and so I will call a third round of questioning, and let me then recognize myself for 5 minutes. Colonel Paris, did you say? I think I heard you say in the course of the hearing that you believe Mr. Crooks fired 8 shots and that 8 shell casings were recovered. Did I hear that?
Oh, yes. Good question.
Were they all recovered in the vicinity of his body?
I'm told that they were.
When the information, let's see, the information concerning having identified Crooks as a suspicious figure was relayed, and the text message was sent to the Secret Service Command Center. PSP was present, I understand. Is that correct?
The PSP member who received those from Butler, yes.
That's what I want to clarify first. Was it a PSP member who received that text?
So I can comment that it was a PSP member who received that from Butler ESU.
And passed it, and then advised Secret Service.
Immediately advised Secret Service, and then passed it at their direction
to a telephone number. Texted the information to a telephone number.
That's what I was briefed.
That was given by the Secret Service representative. Did the Secret Service representative indicate to whom that connected? Who was being sent the information via that number?
I do not know. Our understanding was, from an interview that we conducted, that it was some sort of tactical asset of the Secret Service.
Was there any comment or discussion in the command center about the advisability of keeping the president off the stage until the matter was resolved, either at that moment or later?
I do not know, and I would only underscore what I said before, the distinction between suspicion versus a threat. At that point, I think concerning, but it was still, the perspective at the time was suspicious and not yet a threat.
How did...
Hi, Annie. Glad you're here, girl.
So the information was relayed from ESU officers to a PSP officer. Do I understand that correct?
Yes.
Did ESU have command officers in the command center?
That was asked earlier, and like I said, I received a briefing that my understanding was that there were Butler County representatives in the command post, but I cannot definitively tell you from any briefings that I've had who and when they were there.
Do you have any insight why the Butler ESU officers transmitted that information to a PSP representative rather than to a Butler ESU representative in the command center?
I understand that there was, the Butler ESU person from whom it came and the PSP member to whom it was sent they essentially knew one another.
Oh, they knew one another.
Was there any mechanism in place to monitor the location presence of the ESU officers who were at the second floor window and departed from there to go look for crooks? Was that any kind of communication ongoing in the command center with that about that?
I don't know.
Is that a regular practice in PSP operations to have someone monitoring the location, presence, posting, absence from posts of members of your force?
I would say in general, you need to know where your assets are deployed, but I would also say, depending on what the prior rules of engagement are, there may be a situation that could realistically, outside of the example we're discussing today, that we would expect our people to make a decision in the immediate moment to address another issue.
All right, I yield back and recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Something Mr. LaLotta said that I want to emphasize and underline, which is, gentlemen, I hope you lean forward when it comes to making decisions, making what your gut tells you is the right decision when you're out there trying to protect American lives, especially those of candidates. The situation is an interesting one because in this committee, we have been talking about domestic terrorism as being a bigger threat to the United States than foreign terrorism. And I would imagine, based on the facts that we know today, this is a domestic individual that God knows what motivated him to do what he's doing. He was looking up information according to what I've read. He was looking up both Democrat and Republican candidates. God knows what set him off or where he was going, or what targets he was really focused on other than possibly the opportunity. This is not good news because this is essentially a lone wolf, it would appear.
Yeah, I don't think so.
God knows what motivated him.
Yeah, God knows,
I'm
huh?
bringing this up because, Mr. Yost, you represent thousands of police officers in this country. A lot of them doing the job to the best of their abilities. And yet these are challenges that are very hard to take on. How do you, based on what your officers say out there, what is it that we can do to make your job better? What is it?
How about stop calling Trump Hitler?
Get a grip on these lone wolf attacks that are
lone wolf, my ass.
motivated and grown.
Sir, I'm not too sure I have an easy answer for you on that one. I will tell you that we live in extraordinary times right now, where we've gone from talking to people to talking at people, and I think what you see over a period of time, this is eroded to a part where I think through social media or whatever events, we built a community around our own belief systems, and I think that in some ways is what empowers some people who act out on things.
Ginger, you're making me
may
hungry.
never understand why some people take the actions they do. I think we're just in some
I
extraordinary.
think we all understand it.
Country. And that's,
You called the man Hitler.
as
You
law
said he was a
enforcement
threat to our
officer, we went through
democracy.
that period of time of the dehumanization of law enforcement. It certainly took a
Your
toll
rhetoric
on us as
was
professionals.
toxic.
I'll give you some examples of how dangerous it is to be a police officer right now. Last year,
Because
there
of the
were
rhetoric.
78 officers that were shot in the line of duty. 60 died. And the number of
Thank
ambush
you,
attacks on law
Black
enforcement
Bride
were over
Matter.
100. That's last year. This year, well, already the first 6 months, we're
You know what I'm
200
saying.
officers have been shot in the line of duty.
Last year,
If you could
Last year
understand
was
Bumbles, you can
376.
understand me.
and this year we're at
This year we're at 200 just in the first 6 months. So we're on par, or it will exceed what last year's been. There's just so much hatred.
The criminals are running the show. That's what's going
I agree with
on.
the statements made by pretty much everyone in this room. We need to turn the rhetoric down.
Turn
I
rhetoric
think
down.
It's not
You
serving
think?
anyone. The hatred that we have across this country is permeating into everything we have.
Thank you,
That's-
media.
everybody owns a little bit of
Thank you.
responsibility with it. We need to focus on finding solutions to problems rather than blaming others for what the problem.
Oh, you think?
I know that that's not your question, but I think.
well, actually, you are answering my question, sir.
I'm sorry, what?
You are answering my question.
Yeah. So what can be done, sir? We really need to turn our rhetoric down. We need to recognize that in reality, this is the reality when it comes to law enforcement. The majority of violent crime in this country is committed by a small percentage of people. When we're able to separate them from the people that they prey on, we impact crime. We struggle in this country because law enforcement officers are doing their job to try and separate that. But I think our system is just so many layers in it that shows that it's fractured. And we really need to get back to the real business of protecting the people we serve. That's the end of the day. That's what's most important. And so we live in some extraordinary times. I look at what happened here on the political stage. It doesn't surprise me because this has been happening across our country, across.
That's right. Close the
A
border.
number of individuals.
Commissioner Harris, any thoughts?
I would just say that we endeavor to try and be the most professional that we can to earn that respect every day. I think every encounter of the millions of calls of service that troopers answer across 45,000 square miles of the Commonwealth is an opportunity to establish that relationship and be professional and do the right thing. And that's what I think, sometimes the more complex the problem, the more simple the solution in terms of keeping our focus on being professionals, doing the right thing at the right time, and showing up every day and earning it.
If I can conclude by saying that thank you for your service to our country and to our communities, keeping us safe, and consider us.
They're not keeping
I
us
speak
safe.
for everybody up here, consider us partners.
Annie's right.
of
As long as the
yours.
borders are open,
Work
nobody's
with
safe.
us, talk to us, not at us, but with us, so we can figure out how to solve. some
President
issues.
Trump is right. They
Thank
are
you very
sending the
much,
worst
Mr. Chairman.
criminals over our borders on
Gentleman yields
purpose,
back, and all time having
hoping
expired
to
in
sow
these,
to
second
sow
round of
chaos
discussion.
and destruction.
I would yield to the ranking member for a closing statement if you have one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do. And
You're right, Annie.
again,
No one is safe with this
repeat myself.
administration.
Thanks our witnesses for being here today. And I want to thank our chairman for calling this most important hearing. July 13th was a tragedy. Can't let it happen again.
It was a setup.
And that's why we're here today. Oversight to get the facts. And I believe that we have started getting some facts. A whole lot more work to be done, but we're going in that direction.
Where's
We
Mayorkas?
do have a lot of questions for the Secret Service.
Where's Joe?
For local law enforcement.
Is he even
and as
alive?
Mr. Ivy said, the locals didn't get a lot of notice when it came to this campaign event for a presidential candidate. We need to do better. The American public is relying on us to get some answers. We want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to guard our democracy regarding our candidates.
Annie, you know what the right thing to
As
do
we get
is.
closer to the November election, like you both have said, we got to watch the rhetoric. We got to tone it down. And I've heard those words in this committee. Right after January 6th, we echoed those same words from both sides. Tone it down, folks.
Bring up January 6th. Come on.
We can do better. We can do better for this
We just
country,
had a coup take
for
place.
democracy.
Where's President Joe?
We need to again set an example for the rest of the world. All of us together, we can do this.
No, we can't do this when half of us are criminals.
I thank the gentleman, and I'm going to give
Annie, girl, you have a lot of sense.
for him, but it's prepared here, and I think that is the appropriate way to end. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to the witnesses, especially Colonel Paris. I will say that in the North Carolina Highway Patrol is an institution in my state that I have not, until I had occasion to serve in the legislature and then subsequently run for Congress and serve districts that have constantly changed in North Carolina, and I have seen institutionally how the State Highway Patrol has then fed the sheriff's offices over the course of time with elected sheriffs who've come up in that institution. And I don't know that much about your organization, but you remind me of the fine men and women of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and I really do appreciate your candor. Tomorrow, the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, will be testifying before the Judiciary Committee.
Oh, that should be interesting.
And I hope he'll be candid.
He won't.
I believe there are moments when the sanctity of criminal investigations needs to be tempered by the fact that the nation needs answers to a national security crisis, as I suggested before. You have been candid while still protecting the sanctity of the investigations that are ongoing, or of which your agency is a part, and I appreciate that very much. So, during this hearing, we got the news that Director Cheadle resigned.
Woo!
After
Should have been
refusing to
fired.
give straightforward answers to Congress and the American people about the Secret Service's failures on July 13th, seeing the chairman return, I'm going to pause and let him give his statement, which I had commenced.
However necessary as it was, Director Cheadle's indisputably overdue resignation is only the first step on the path to accountability and reform. Today's hearing was a vital step in obtaining more information about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, but Congress has a lot of work ahead of us. I think today, as we've questioned these professionals who've served their communities and their states for their lifetime, we've discovered a lot of facts, particularly about the operation. Yesterday when we were on the site, we learned about the planning failures. Today we've learned about conducts of the operation failures, communications and things like that, people moving and maybe not notifying, those kinds of things. Secret Service making a decision to not stop the president when a guy's using a rangefinder and is described as suspiciously.
It's a setup.
It just boggles the mind.
Doesn't boggle the mind when it's a setup.
We're going to continue to investigate the failures of the Secret Service.
They wanted him dead.
It's very clear. We've got to get to the bottom of it.
Their mission was clear.
Never happen again. I want to thank both of you for serving and for a very long testimony today. Thanks for sticking around and letting us. We're going to have lots of other people come in here, and we're going to get granular on all of this stuff. But this is the closest that anyone's come to taking the life of a president or a presidential candidate in over 4 decades. It can never happen again. It just simply cannot. So we're going to continue our fact finding.
Where's Joe?
To figure out exactly how it happened, much like a after action review would. Identify all those areas and ensure that Secret Service, whomever steps up to take that leadership role now, does so and addresses these things. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And if there are members, what often happens in our committee hearing, they'll have questions that come to them.
You're right, Annie.
To generate written questions. Would you be open to us sending those to you and you just send a letter back with the answers in writing? Okay, thank you. I appreciate the affirmative nods. Again, thanks for being here. And I think both sides of the aisle did an amazing job. And you made some closing comments, Mr. Gray. Did you get a chance to? Okay, I'm sorry I missed them. I'm sure they were.
Second shot, I can repeat myself.
I'll go watch the tape. The committee stands adjourned.
And there we have it, folks. How do I turn this thing around? All right, guys. I don't know, for some reason I can't find out how to turn it around. Camera, crazy. All right, well, anyway, thank you all for joining me again to watch these useless hearings, which I don't think get anything done, but they sure do make us frustrated, don't they? All right, you guys, see you later on the next Beach Report. Ciao for now.